really started papers very early when I was in college. So, yep, just my heads up. There's a lot of stuff happening. And I kind of feel like this in the background in regards to the last couple semesters. And it's like, can I get an extension? I've got this issue in life. And of course, all these other things. And everything's legit. It's all legit. That being said, there's a beginning to every semester and there's an end. And our end is no different. So if you're behind, if you still have stuff to turn in, if you're feeling like, the semester's getting away from you, now is the time. It's always the time, but now is especially the time to kind of kick it into full gear and finish strong. As we approach the fourth quarter of this semester, don't do what the Bulls did the other night. Oh, they hung tight with the Golden State Warriors for so long, but then just fourth quarter. So in the very last bits of this semester, try and do some of your best work so that you can really attain the grades you want to. Donations. If you are not achieving the grade that you want to, even if you are, remember the extra credit thing that's going on. We are feeding people. We're not doing all that well, but I'm not worried about it actually, because every semester in the past, when we were in person, people just showed up on 2 different dates. Everybody gave. So maybe by Thursday, I'll come up with some of the tallies for that. I'll look at, just how much all my classes have raised. We're trying to get, I think, 7,000 is our goal. 7,000. So 12,000 meals. Last semester we did 18. I think we can still do that. So Jason, what can I do? Share that link. Grandma or your brother-in-law or your dad or some uncle or anybody who pays attention to your social media-ness. Wow, that was incredible. And sorry, it's just super loud on my end. And so, yeah, let's do that. Let's donate. Any questions before I get into this? Actually, and I do want to continue for a little bit and wrap up our discussion on what was that? Taken for a Ride, the transportation documentary. There's a couple things I don't think we really got to, but any questions right now? Nope. All right. Well, if you do have questions or concerns or anxiety or anything, don't put that off. Reach out to me. That's why I ask every single class period, because we are interested in making sure that you do really well in this class. I am very interested in that. Okay. All right. So anything else about Taken for a Ride? What about how do they sell cars? We didn't talk about that. They focused on how we sell cars and get people, right? Because they had to get people to transfer over while they're, simultaneously destroying mass transit and public transportation, setting it up with less convenient, dirtier routes and destroying neighborhoods and all that good stuff. What was the plan? How did they sell people on cars? How do they still sell people on cars? Because they talked about that. And what do you think?
Something that kept coming to mind while watching the documentary and like reading more about it was just how much of a push like all the advertisements were to like you need to have a car, like this is a thing. And I thought it was interesting because like in the documentary we were seeing things like, or not that in the documentary, but we see things now like light rails and stuff, and you're talking about trolleys, and that kind of proved that like, oh, maybe cars aren't as necessary. But now like all the advertisement shifted from like, look at this luxury to like, oh, this is a necessity. So I thought that was kind of almost funny.
Yeah, right. You gotta have it. And you gotta have a new one. And it's this, that historical push for the suburbs, right? Where everybody's not living in a more centralized area. They're building just the tiny boxes thing, as they showed the rows and rows and rows of houses that they were building. That kind of went along with it. Good. How else? What else? So as a necessity, how else do they advertise cars? Did they get people to believe that this is something not only you need, but that you want?
I think they like buy into the idea of the new, and like they have new models of the same car every year. And it's a whole, and they have this whole, you should buy a new car, you're worth it. Or new cars make you look cool. They make people think higher of you, regardless of the like fact that old cars may or may not work just fine, and also have a lot of material that becomes trash after they are through their life cycle.
Yeah, good. A lot of things there, absolutely. And yeah, you need this. You look good in this. So you're kind of touching upon that status piece, right? I mean, owning a car or a certain kind of car, I'm sure was always a bit of a status piece because, of course, transitioning. Imagine that, right? I mean, we didn't talk about this, but in that documentary, did you see? And I'm going to swear here for a minute, so relax. That shit show in New York City, which is like horses and carriages, trucks and cars going super fast, people jumping in and out of traffic. I don't know. It looked like how many people were like, and I guess they're more aware at that point, right? Because otherwise you'd think that the fatalities would be immense. But yeah, a lot of that. Okay, so you need it, status piece. How else did they kind of try and do that? There's one really uncomfortable thing. It was uncomfortable for me. That was the footage of a car show from back in like the late 40s or early 50s. What was that? Can anybody describe that? It's so weird.
Pretty much they just had like really good looking women showing off the cars.
Yeah, like here, I've got a stool that can do that right now, right? You know, they had them like on a weird stage that kept going around in circles. First of all, can you imagine what it's like to sit in that car for like 8 hours? Just and advertising it had somebody, you know, an attractive person in there waving, you know, to sell the car, right? So early on, and there still are attempts to make cars like sexualized, right? You know, you're going to look sexy in this. This attracts the opposite sex. The car is sexy. The woman's sexy. Now, all you need is the car to get the whatever, right? Whatever that was, it's another part of that piece to get people interested in vehicles. Somebody said sex sells. Well, of course. I mean, you know, and quite literally in many places in the world. But certainly enhances, or that's, you know, the car maker's idea, the sellability of it. How come somebody like me wasn't sitting there? How come they never invite somebody like me to sit in the car and wave? Maybe I wouldn't sell as many cars. I don't know.
Your beard is too awesome for them.
Thank you. I actually, Samuel, just right on the money with that one. Yes. My beard is far too regal to sit in the car and not just go forward instead of in circles. How is another way? There's maybe one more thing that I just kind of alluded to. Another way that they get people to want that car. How do they advertise cars? What's that key element that they said? They always show a car, blah, 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 blah. Anybody remember?
Are you talking about when like the cars are always off like in a countryside instead of like when we really see them was like on a crowded highway or in the neighborhoods?
Yeah, it's like some windy, curvy road like in Batman with like leaves blowing every time you go around a curve, right? You know, and you're free and you're just cruising. There's nobody else there, right? Change snapshot to, hey, let's go down to Denver. Get on I-25, immediately standing still, right? Somebody's gotten in an accident. Somebody screwed it up. You're going 2 miles an hour. It smells awful. People are rude. They're angry. And there's maybe somebody who waves. I don't want to paint it all as a bad picture. So yeah, like as if you are really on that open road and that's what the car is. And of course the car symbolizes that. But there's a lot of other drivers out there, even then, because they didn't quite have the road infrastructure. So as they're building roads, also the new, you know, amount of new drivers, that thing that we talked about before. By the time you build 2 or 3 more lanes in Colorado, it's kind of pointless because that many new people, you know, have moved to the state. Now you're expected to sort of handle, so now 2 more lanes. Or maybe we finally go that route. But like Taylor says here, they intentionally keep public transportation low standards. So people would rather get their own car rather than deal with it. The trolleys were running often. They were clean. They were fantastic. They got you there on time. Then they said they pull a line, right? They pull a line. And then it doesn't service quite as many people. Then they pull another one. And then it doesn't get to this part of town. And then eventually, yeah, right? Eventually they purposefully make it so inconvenient or so to where it's not really serving people like it should. And then, of course, people draw the conclusion that they are led to draw, not necessarily the conclusion that is their conclusion, but that they better get a car if they really want to do that, or get around, or whatever that might be. Okay. Anything else stand out about this this little documentary, which I think is so fantastic? Take it for a ride. It'll be on the exam for sure. Anything else stand out? I thought that we were maybe missing a few things last time because it was such a good discussion. I'll be quiet here for a sec, just in case.
I can't remember if we talked about this last class, but I just thought it was interesting how, like, in this documentary or this film, they kind of show how General Motors really, like, revolutionized everything. I didn't realize how much of an impact they had of, like, really changing everything. Like, I knew they were big, but I thought that was interesting on, like, how they're able to focus on that, and how by their marketing and the way they were, like, paying off different sectors, they were able to, like, change that. And, like, I wonder if that company was never developed, if we would ever have the extreme amount that we do now.
Interesting question. Yeah, I think they were saying if they were a country, they would have like the 5th or 6th highest GDP. You know, at the time, they're making so much money that you can wield political power. Suddenly, the transportation or the Secretary of Defense is like from General Motors, and suddenly there's advisors, and suddenly these people get lots of government money, and they hold, you know, big parties and balls with I mean, they even had a road builder's prayer, right? And they're releasing the videos that are like the little, we talked about that, the Think of the Children, and the like propaganda videos to go along with this. And they're blowing up mountains. You know, this is progress. Yeah, definitely. They are a very powerful company. They wielded that power in massive amounts of ways to provide the infrastructure, to destroy the neighborhoods, to tear out the mass transit. And then, of course, you know, I guess the other thing was they found somebody to do the bus line. Did they find a big city slicker to do the bus lines, or what was their approach? Because their approach to each one of these things, gotta hand it to them. They were very smart, albeit from my perspective, pretty evil. I'll make that value judgment, but still pretty smart. Does anybody remember that component? Well, anyway, definitely exercising their power and yeah, and doing something with it. Big stuff, really. If you think about how they changed the infrastructure and the entire thought process for how we get around. Now we're in a scenario here quite a bit longer or down the road where we're returning to these things, and we know it costs a lot of money. Saw somebody talking about the Green New Deal today. It was embarrassing. And they said, well, how much money do you think cave people spent while this globe was spinning around in a cyclical way, trying to fight climate change? I don't know. It was the most ridiculous thing in the world. But yeah, when you have money, you can have access, you can influence decisions, and that might not be the best path forward. So now, of course, replacing that will cost billions and billions and billions. But just like we know with the Green New Deal, you have to spend that money. Mitigation is far much more important than adaptation. The answer is always the same. You'll save money. Anytime you hear the argument about money, 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 you know, if you're really fiscally responsible, there's an argument to go along with that would prove that at the point, which is mostly the point, which is doing nothing, saves money. Yes, I guess, but it doesn't get us anywhere. Certainly federal laws and money and spending and things like that have a lot to do with how we change or don't change the system. Political influence and money allowed these companies in 14 years to destroy all that transportation. So the same can be used to restore it. All right, let me, there's our transportation. Then I'll do a screen share here. I really think this stuff is infinitely interesting. One of the reasons I think it's so interesting is because we're just, you know, we are approaching a few things in new ways, but we're coming back to something that we did successfully. And so there's a lot of ways that we can model what that looks like. Oh, there's my VW. No, that's not my VW van. That is not my car either. Do you love your car? Okay, I guess I'm going to stop the screen share here. And head over to Top Hat. I asked these questions earlier today, so hopefully we've got some answers. Oh yeah, we've got this. Do you love your car? All right. Wow, this is an intense question, right? I never really ask you, do you love your mom? Do you love sociology? I don't think I've asked you that yet. So I'm going to ask you, do you love your car? Survey says out of 59 respondents, 45 said yes, 10 said no, and 4 said C. Hey, what car? All right. Why, I guess, geez, why do you love your car? I'm going to ask that right now. Why did you say a majority of people, 47 to 10, 2 more people since we're just been talking, said, I love my car. I think that's fair. It's not just, it's not just because we are in this class that you're supposed to hate your car or something like that. So why do you love your car? Most people do, most semesters. Why? It's a pretty strong word. It's not even like, is it complicated with your car? Nope. 45 people, 47 people, 48 people now love my car. So why? Talk to me, human beings.
Well, this isn't really what you asked, but I don't love my car because I don't have one. I found a bike and a bus can get you really anywhere.
Awesome. And in this town, Samuel, that is one of the advantages of it. I really do talk some trash about my hometown of Freeport, Illinois, because we don't even have bike lanes, and no bus system, and very impoverished community. So what's the expectation? And of course, getting spread apart. So yeah, good. You don't. I have seat warmers. All right. Just hold up here. About the seat warmers. I think I need to address this seriously. I love that too. That's all I'm going to say. If I had a car, I used to have a car. I hated that Subaru. I'll never have a Subaru again. I should have this car in Colorado kind of car that's just kind of junk. That being said, it had heated seats and I felt like royalty. Every time I got in that car, it was summertime and I'd press the button just to be like, I've got this. So yes, that's legit. What else? What else do you think? Why else do you love your car or not? I'm not going to read all these because I'm more interested in people participating. I might read a couple of them, but what do you think?
I think there's like awesome memories attached to my car, like road trips or like, I don't know, like in high school is always like a big deal. Like you had you got your driver's license and like I still have that car from high school. So I think there's like a lot of memories attached to it. And that's why like I like my car.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's pile in the car and do something. If you're from the Midwest, I remember just getting in a car and driving around gravel roads with no point whatsoever to it. It was just like to get out. Good. What else?
Yeah, personally, I'm just kind of like a car guy. So I love everything with a motor and I just kind of love cars. But I have found that not having a car here in college, just biking around, I can do most of the things I need to do. And then just kind of bum a ride off of people for those trips that are further out.
Awesome. So love cars, but here, can get away with it and do most of the things that you need to. I do too. I don't know anything about a car, but I'll stand there and look at a car engine with a beer in my hand and be like, oh yeah, yep, I'm not a person that should ever put my hands in that engine, but I'll stand there and assess it. Let me see. Back in the day, didn't have seat warmers, lit a bonfire in the back seats. You're lying, kid. I used to light a bonfire in the back of my seat by trying to let a cigarette out the window and then having it fly into the back seat and start a fire. Hey-o. Good times, good times. Almost always lived in places, buses where I could ride a bike, cars almost, almost always without buses. Cars almost in my, okay, so options. Just, you love your car because you lived in places without options. Absolutely, yeah. Anything else? Any other reasons we love our car? You love your car?
So I wrote this in the chat, but I guess I can say it aloud too. I've been driving this specific car since my driving permit. and I've had it even longer because it was actually my grandparents' car before that. So just it's as old as my cousin, who's 3 years younger than me. So it's been around the block quite a few times. So a lot of good memories. You know, kind of like what was previously said, and also just I also came from a town that doesn't really have bike lanes. It doesn't even have sidewalks really. So
Right.
you know, and my school was about 8 miles away. So it was just transportation wasn't really an option. So sentimentality, and also it was my only option.
Yeah, so we're like emotionally invested in these vehicles. You know, the front wheels fell off, or that one just snapped a month ago. I think I told you that or not, but on Julie's truck when I was dropping the kids off to school in the morning, right after I dropped them off, she loves that truck. Like, it's trash. It's like old. She doesn't take the best care of the inside of it, but you better respect that truck because she loves that truck. Storm's like, yeah, I think I might want your truck, Mom. And that was just disaster. I knew that was going to be disaster. So yeah, sometimes it's been around for a long time. Symbolizes like a part of our life or a stage in our life. I guess she's had that. That truck's over 20 some years old. We've had it for quite some time. I've never bought a new car. We've always found really fantastic Toyotas. I've always had only Toyotas. And they've never ever let me down. I love those vehicles. Used, we bought them used mostly from, I guess, private parties, individuals. Okay, great. I think this is a really good, if we're going to talk about, right, well, back in the day they did this. Now let's talk about now. Now is, I got to get somewhere. Now is my school's 8 miles away. Now is, I love this vehicle because like I can, I don't know, drive around and, you know, hang out with friends, whatever. Okay, good. So describe your car in one word. What's the name of your car? Certainly, we love our cars, but certainly people didn't actually come up. People don't name their cars, do they? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Describe your car in one word. This is a lot like asking, what is our relationship with food, or anything else that we talk about in this class. Describe your car in one word. Non-existent, 4. 3, old. Reliable, 3. Essential, 3. Useful, 3. Convenient, 3. Necessity, blue. 2 people with blue. Wow. Helpful, 2. Fun, efficient, messy, slow, awesome, braking, compact, unsustainable, mass polluter, hardworking, soccer mom, small, outdated, decent, pollutant, zippy, tank, guzzler, capable, utility, safe, basic, necessary, beautiful, speedy, love, sexy, not very fuel efficient, broken, I don't have a car, freedom, 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 tool, none, special, gas, hybrid, non-existent, used. Okay, there we go. All right, and we'll do one more here today because I think these are, again, you know, we can talk, and we will, about how we're getting around globally, what that looks like, what we can do for solutions. But a lot of these to me are pretty awesome. So what is the name of your car? I'm assuming these are real. Usually they are. My gold V-Dub van, 1984 Vanagon that's parked on this property but never goes anywhere is called C-3PO. It's painted gold and it even has Return of the Jedi curtains. How deep do you roll, Jason, in Star Wars? Pretty deep. So C-3PO, there, that car's named. N-A, 3 people in exactly the same, capital N / small a. Jeep, 3. BB, Ferdinand. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here. Did you know that every semester there are multiple vehicles named Ferdinand? Like, I'm just stopping because I've been doing this for like 8 years now, and it's not like Joe. It's like, how many of you have friends named Ferdinand? How come everybody's car is named Ferdinand? Not everybody, but how come there's so many? Wow. Ferdinand, I remember a book about a bull, right? Like a lazy bull that just wanted to sit and smell flowers all day. I think that was like a children's book, positive of it. Okay. Ferdinand does not have one. Snowball, the Cobalt, Licorice, Amber, Finn, Scooby Dooby or Subi Booby. I'm not sure if that's a typo or not. Oh, Subi. Oh, okay, because it's super. Abe, Bert. It's like people are naming their cars after like man's names from the 1930s. Abe, Bert, When I had a car, I named it Ticonderoga after the pencil. Interesting. Durango. No car, have no name. Jenny Jeep, Tina, Subi, Ford Fusion, just Subi. Lexi, Bo the Volvo. Sally, I don't love it enough to name it. Alashi V2, I don't know. The Buick Hellstar. Wow, that's like a spaceship name on a car. Papa Smurf, Speedy, Alyssa, Sharky, Susie, Ken, Bessie, Pearl, but it's a Chevy Impala. Imaginary, Subaru Outback, Gravy, Layla, Indy, Gary. That's my dad's name. What's with these names? That's so great. If you've ever seen the cartoons Final Space, it's really awesome. Gary. Morello, Rodney, Fern. Boy, we're not done yet. Sonata, Susan, Jenny, Ringo, and Dixon. Why'd you name your car? I've named now. I already told you that I named one of my vehicles. Why? And I'd even be down with the how, but why do we have so many people who have given names to their vehicles? What's that? What is that about human beings? Is that a way, like, were we told to do that or bond with cars or vehicles, and then we did, now we feel closer to them, and that's like some transportation plot by GM? I'm kidding, of course. What do you think? Anybody?
Are you asking like our personal experience or just like in general?
I don't know. Why'd you name your car, or in general? Or why do you think people name their cars? I'm good with either one of those.
Well, for me personally, I named my car Little Bitch because it's a really small car, and like any puddle, she will hydroplane. Like at any chance she gets to screw up, she will. So that's why I named her Little Bitch. But in general, I think people name their cars because it's such an essential part of their life. It's like an everyday thing, and that, especially if it's like the family car, it's in a way a part of the family. So
yeah. Wow, that's pretty interesting. And I said maybe naming it makes you have a deeper connection with it, like naming a pet. I mean, yeah, I'm totally open to the concept. Any other thoughts why you named yours or why people name their vehicles?
I wonder
For my family, we named like all of our cars, even like our camper trailer that was used when we got it. So like it wasn't even brand new and like fancy or anything. But yeah, it must have been like sentimental value, also kind of convenience, because we're all sharing these cars. We're like, which car should I take to school today? We're like, oh, Sally, oh, Jules. So I guess it's also like a convenience thing and like a sentimental thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's hilarious. If it'd be like, am I going to take Bert, Gary, or Abe today to school? Those would be like, for some reason, those are my favorite names on this list. It's just that stuff. And yeah, that's the only name, actually, Abby, of a car that I did skip over because I wanted to make sure that I was being respectful. Noah, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying, I wonder if the movie Cars, like, impacted people naming their cars, like Mater and Lightning Queen, stuff like that.
I mean, potentially. I suppose that movie's been out now for like 20. Ooh, how long has that movie been out now for?
I don't know, not that long.
But
But,
still,
like, I
it
wonder if
probably
it influenced people to.
it definitely influences people. Yeah, I mean, it influences me because when I see an old tow truck, I'm like, oh, tow Mater. I mean, they got me, right? They got me for sure. Oh, some of these comments. Cars are an identity. Okay. That's pretty funny, Madison. All right, so an identity, a personality, yeah, just we give car life to feel superior. I mean, all these things. Okay, good. So it's not a casual one, right? It's something that's kind of intimate in a way for us. This relationship with vehicles, knowing that likely in our lifetimes, at least now or for the near foreseeable future, most people or many people are going to have to do a lot of driving. It's become one of the ways in which we've organized our social life. So, do you love your car? How concerned are you about? I'll get. Sorry, let me get to that. These are all really important. Okay, how concerned are you about your car's emissions? Very, 17, twice that, sort of, 6, not at all. And let's get to this 2, which I want to make sure that that's, what is your most common form of transportation? Car, 49, crushing with the tidal wave, everything else. 9, bike, 1, public transportation. 5, for friends drive me around, that's always good. And 2 for other. Perhaps riding a unicorn to class or something like that, which would really be quite fantastic, actually. All right, let me see here. All right, so what's your most common? That is also not my VW. That is, however, a VW that you drive if you always want to talk to the police. I would say that that would be a good vehicle to drive if you like having conversations with cops. Probably. Could be wrong. All right, so just a few of these things, and I think it's good. There's tow maters. Hey-oh, speaking of tow mater, transportation stats. There's not a lot of stats, but it's enough for us to kind of be like, oh, make a sociological observation on this kind of thing, right? So 25% of all trips made within 1 mile of home. 40% 2 miles of home. So we're almost half of all of the driving that people do, and we're only 2 miles from home. All right. 50% of working population commutes 5 miles or less. Oh, the half people are driving aren't really making the big drive. 82% of all trips are 5 miles or less. 82% of trips that are 5 miles or less are made using a car. So if we're still not going all that far, I say not that far. It's like, when's the last time that I ran 5 miles or 4 miles? Not recently. 60% of car pollution happens in the first few minutes of operation. All right, what do you think? We just talked about our relationship with vehicles. I think that this directly sort of with some facts and some stats addresses what we just talked about. Anybody want to make a sociological observation?
I think the suburbs has a huge impact on this for sure, because for me, like, I'm at my parents' house right now, and it takes me it's like 3 miles to get out of the neighborhood in itself. Just to get, I got Starbucks this morning, it took me like literally 20 minutes to get there. So it's just like ridiculous how spread out we are and everything. Especially like public transportation in the United States is terrible. So you kind of have to have a car if you want to do anything, unless you live like in the heart of a city.
Yeah, we have done an excellent job at making public transportation terrible. It's just, you're right. I mean, there's not really any other way to say it. When you make it on purpose, dirty and inconvenient and all of these things, you do that to sell cars. Sure, you do that to make the other options better, right? 20 minutes, right? Just to get a short distance away. Yep, more people, more neighborhoods, more spread out, further from things. And of course, we're going to look at this. If you've already looked at the PowerPoint, you may have seen that, but we'll look at, how we used to be, and then what we've moved, towards as far as where people are living and the use for their vehicles. Make some other sociological observations of this data.
I think it's interesting that like the majority of car pollution happens within the first couple minutes, and we're only driving a couple minutes anyways. And so when we like turn on and off our car and like get in, like most of the pollution is occurring when we do these like short little trips.
Yeah, and this is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and this is where I used to get salty with the police, like, because I would always see cop cars running in the gas station, outside the wherever, just like leaving their car on all the time, and it would drive me nuts. I guess we could suggest that for those people that would be getting in and out for frequent trips and driving all day long or in their vehicles for much of the day, maybe there's something to be said for that saves on some pollution, with the way that the vehicle works, the combustion engine and things like that. That's that piece right there. Okay, good. There's other observations we can make from this data. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking like in the winter, you have your car warming up. Like if you have it idling and heating itself, that's using a lot of energy because it's not moving at all. It's just sitting there becoming a really inefficient heater.
Yeah, absolutely. And inefficient, right? I mean, you don't really get good heat until you start pulling heat off that engine. For the most part, anyway, like a car heating up, I mean, it's, moving helps get the AC going. Moving helps to, kind of make those things, you know, happen. So not accomplishing a whole lot with that, except for, sure, wasting fuel, energy, things like that. Good. What else?
So something that I noticed too is I think another reason why so many people use cars is because it's on your own time scale. Just because I have had definite issues in the past with public transportation around CSU where the bus would you would miss it by 20 minutes, even though you were there right at the marker that it was supposed to be there. So it's just kind of proven that sometimes public transportation isn't as reliable as you want it to be, especially if you only have a few minutes to get to your destination.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, for us to have trust in that, it has to work, right? For it to be a good option, it has to work. Yeah. In Arizona, yeah, the remote. I was going to talk about the remote starts. Yep, Texas, Arizona, that type of thing. Look, I am very against remote starts. Why? Because the 70s. You should have to build the intestinal fortitude of going out in that heat or that cold and doing that. No, I don't know. That's just me being old saying that's not fair because I didn't get it. I feel like a lot of people feel more official when they drive to work, even if it's just sure. And particularly once we start talking about jobs where your vehicle exhibits status, right? If you have a vehicle and whatever kind of vehicle, because we know, I mean, same reason that people have laptops, same reason that have an Apple on them or a phone that's a particular kind of phone, or even fancy expensive jeans that are pre-ripped. It's that idea that it's status, right? We look at that and say, oh wow, well they've got that, they can afford a BMW, whatever. Okay, what else? There's a couple more things here that we usually get to these things first, which I like because you're picking out some of the more subtle things. Good job. Anything else here? I think there is.
I was thinking about how when it says things like 25% is within a mile or 40% is within 2 miles, in my head, I'm like, for some, that could be like you could walk or bike or something like that, but it would take longer. And I think it's interesting because I think this kind of shows that, like, sociologically wise, like from that lens, that cars have almost made humans, I guess, less patient. And I know we've kind of discussed that, but I think it's interesting because we'd rather like spend 5 minutes in a car than like 20 minutes on a bike, even though we know that like with a car you have to pay for it and stuff more than you would have to
Right.
a bike. So it's a lot of cost benefit. And I think it's interesting because it's very different from other countries too.
Yeah, we certainly within our discussion of this is that we are behind for an affluent country with this GDP and the influence that we have in the rest of the world. We have not reciprocated letting their transportation successes infiltrate into our culture in meaningful ways. We just keep that for another time, right? That's another one of those discussions like the Green New Deal. It's like, oh, how expensive will this be? It's like, well, I mean, when's the last time you went to buy a pair of pants? Things cost money. Like that's the truth about things. Most cities are built for cars rather than walking or biking. I think it affects car usage for super short trips. Yeah. And of course, that was mentioned in the film, where I believe it's the guy from San Francisco that says, and we have to consider whether cars in doing this any has any value whatsoever for the people in the city. Who are we building these cities for? Is it safe even? Or are we cutting so much traffic so fast through these areas that you'd rather take a bus or take your own car, I mean, because you feel like, gosh, I'm not going to get hit like I might on a bike or like I might, like somehow we've also done that safe piece. All right, there's one more thing here, and then I'll move on. It has to do with just the amount, like the inroads that we could make, or that's a bad dad pun. I didn't mean to do that. It has to do with these trips, right? Which is, look, if almost half of all trips are made 2 miles from home, how do we get people to half their driving? Because that's accessible. I mean, really, it's accessible. If it was like half of our driving takes place 10 miles from home, well, okay. Like then not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to make a very persuasive argument. But 2 miles, you got to be able to public transport that or bike that or something, because it is more accessible. I would say, even if all right, I'm gonna downgrade what we can accomplish. Even if we only go for 25% and not 50, that's a mile or less, right? So theoretically, we could realistically, we could cut 25% of all driving. Very realistically, I would think 50. I know I'm asking a lot, because now you got to go twice that, 2 whole miles. And I know that there are concerns of safety and all sorts of things, but I think we could easily and attainably do 25%. Interested in roads have replaced being able to walk or bike safely. Remember, someone said they want a town ability to walk or bike. Almost shocks me that this is now something people have to seek out. Yeah, and those 2 miles can certainly be grocery shopping, but we're lazy. And the reason I say that is not to rebuttal Taylor, but I say that because I've got a friend that's in Germany right now, and he just did a stop motion video of, once he's got a giant shopping cart full of food, him packing 4 or 5 bags that hook onto his bicycle, like so many people there do, and taking more groceries than I could even ever have imagined, with a couple of little tools, very successfully. So yes, I think 2 miles with groceries here is like, how would I do that? But it is not something that we can't conceptualize for sure. But those 2 miles have different considerations. That being said, forget that. We can handle a mile. We can do that. And then this other piece about, if you want a town that you can walk or bike in, you have to actually seek it out. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. And all the time I've been teaching this class, I never really thought about that. But that's why, like, a lot of people in other countries, or people who are low GDP, or they're suffering, they don't have a lot of money, or there's no more farming, or climate change has ruined the rural thing, they're going to cities. Here in this country, people are doing what I did, right? In an affluent country, they're like, I need to get out to the country. I need to get out someplace where, I don't know, here's why I'm out in the country. I don't have to smell my neighbor's toxic laundry. I don't have to smell and breathe in Roundup, which is cancer causing. Just the amount of pollutants in a regular neighborhood that I have taken away for the last 5 years out of my lungs and out of my, that's safer. I know it is. And so, yeah, I talked about this already this semester, shopping our way to safety, right? This is an example of that. And that's why we all participate in this. I love Recycle There. I buy organic food. I moved out to the country, and that's what we're doing here in this country, is trying to, can I find a place where I can actually walk around the block with my kids or my family and not almost get hit 3 times? Walking around campus has become difficult, and not just because of cars. People on bikes ignore the stop signs more frequently than cars do. So, it's a multimodal transportation really requires a lot of coordination from people, for sure. So, all right. What else here? If we really want to get America's rooted in white spatial imagery that prioritizes, I want to get into it, prioritizes private land over public areas, accumulate generational wealth. It is possible the lack of walking and biking access as a result of this deeply rooted view that personal spaces should be private and accessible to certain people only. I can't snap with my left hand, but I can snap with my right hand. Everything here is right on. Yeah, transportation has to do with gender. Transportation has to do with race. And these constructs, absolutely. And we have a lot of space here in this country, right? So that's another thing that sort of is a bit of a disconnect, right? In many ways. I like that though. And yeah, absolutely. And people who have had a chance to accumulate that wealth and that power and that property and that whatever, then they can keep that distance, or they can have that space. Yeah. All right. So what is transportation? You should definitely know the definition of this. Transportation, just a response to changes in how we organize society. I love this. Listen to a cool podcast, talks about how even lack of shade provided on public transit. Yep. we'll talk about that actually, daylighting as well in this chapter. So a response to changes in how we organize society. We organize society, we're further apart. Or we've got industry changing, you name it. So I like this though, it's a very scientific, it's a very robotic kind of definition, which makes sense. So response to changes in how we organize society, which means that people can say, we have these new values, we have these new ways to organize society, and now you got to respond to it, right? Sort of, putting people in a reactionary position, because most people obviously weren't responsible for firing people, for digging up the trolley lines, for taking out the tracks, for canceling those routes. We simply drive because our urban environments require us to drive, right? A lot of these, and in Fort Collins, again, it's a very unique place. They're really trying hard. Bike racks, places to put your bikes, bike lanes, infrastructure, putting a value, like a societal value on that. I mean, bikes and beer, and how do those go together, and how can they be safe, and right? So many urban environments leave us with little choice. Yes, of course, safety is a big concern. A mile in an urban or in a rural place is different than walking a mile in a rural or in an urban place. You know what I mean? So I think that we know this is a baited question, but is the car's rise the outcome of consumer democracy, like we just all decided, or was that vote rigged? And we know the vote was rigged, right? We know that the values were placed there. Here's why you need it. We just got done talking about all of that. Here's how you need it. Here's how we reinforce that it's safe, it's clean, And of course, we're not talking about a lot of the externalities of vehicles, which they break down. They're expensive. They use a ridiculous amount of raw materials. It's 2021, and I Googled the word fuel, and the only thing that comes up for 20 pages in a row is gasoline and oil. Lame. Give me a break. That's like, it doesn't even seem possible to me, but it is. So obviously, it makes it precarious then to abandon cars if it were to risk your life or your safety, or now you can't get to your job on time, even if it's only 5 miles away or 3 miles away, because you've got to do, right? If we look at the rise in that over the last 50 or 70 years, coincides with more time, more jobs, more hours, more to do. So when you have less of that free time, you have less time to travel, less time to sit and meditate, less time, right? And people will say that, and we haven't heard that yet in this chapter, but I hear it frequently, and we know this, and that is time is money, And so something a car could potentially save me is time, which means it could make me money, All right, so traditional cities, idealized and conceptual diagrams of traditional commuter and automobile cities, right? Prior to 1850, a traditional city in Europe, horse carriage maybe, walking bound transportation mostly, some bikes, and everything's in the city. The city itself isn't, there's no suburbs. That at this point that doesn't exist. Everything you need is kind of located in that small area, your neighborhood, right? All the things you might need are there. If they're not, they're a very short distance away. Then we've got 1850 to 1940 as we begin this sort of automobile city. So we get to this commuter city. And yeah, this is when people, and they were talking about it. I'm commuting, I'm on a trolley, I'd go, now finally the neighborhoods are a bit outside the main city. But you're still getting to them with, walking, you're still getting to them with trolley-based transportation or bicycles. They're not so very big and not so very far apart. And then from 1940 to present, just large areas. Maybe there's a lower density outside of the immediate city itself. In the immediate city itself, it's almost, you almost can't distinguish in many cases the downtown, and you're still going 20, 30, 40 minutes later. I mean, I was just watching George Carlin today, and he's like, malls, we love malls. We do malls, and then we do mini malls. And in between the mini malls and the big malls, the malls, we've got mini marts. Anyway, yeah, how did the way we organize society turn into that and grow like this? And we've talked about that. So, kind of where we find ourselves in this discussion now is here we are. There's the necessity. right? Okay. I'm going to get to this information next time, I feel like. And I wanted to ask how we had a lot of people that said that they are not very concerned about their car's emissions. Why is that? I kind of wanted to do a follow-up on that. So maybe you own an old car, maybe you have a new car, maybe the state tells you anyway and you don't worry about it. I oftentimes see some of the biggest diesel burning smoke sort of kicking out particulates into the air. Trucks are sometimes the ones that are emissions exempt, depending on government status and things like that. So what do we think? Why not a lot of concern expressed in this class about emissions? Why not? Or why did you choose very or sort of or not at all?
I think I said sort of because I just don't know much about it. I don't know what my car, how bad its emissions are. Like it passed the emissions test, like I can drive it on the road. That's all I know really about it.
Okay, good. Not a lot of knowledge about it. What else? Okay, want an electric car, but one, I can't afford it. Two, the damage done to the environment to find rare minerals to make the battery. Three, my Subaru is partially zero emissions. Many Subarus actually are. Okay, so handful of reasons. Can't afford it. And it's nice, hybrids, the idea of that, or a fully electric car, although this technology has been around for many decades, I wouldn't say that those vehicles are very accessible price-wise to most people. And I'm not sure what accessible for everybody is a bit different. I'm just going to say across the board, I think we can agree on that term. If it was more accessible, we'd certainly have more of them around. And we have been seeing that over the last several years as compared to maybe a decade ago. Any other thoughts on this? Maybe you chose this because you don't have a car. I get that. If you do have a car, any other concerns about emissions? Anybody drive a really old vehicle and they were very concerned just because it costs a lot of money to get it, to get it going? Or it passes?
Yeah, I think when people talk about emissions in cars, they always think about what's coming out the tailpipes, but I think there's a lot more to it. Like even like the leather used in some cars, that's like polluting a lot to make that leather. Or like you're talking about the Prius, those batteries total themselves after 10 years. So like a Prius is pretty much done after 10 years, no matter. So like an old diesel truck might be more efficient in the long term.
Yeah, I'm going through, I could have my midlife crisis vehicle right now. Do you know that? I'm 47. I mean, like, I should be looking forward to that, right? Like, get some fancy new car and drive around and, I don't know, help reinforce my machismo at 47. But I love and would really want none of that. I want like an old truck, like a 1940s or 50s old Ford truck. I would love that. But we did talk about, right, in this class, the difference between the use and what you get out of it. If you're still driving a car from 1940s and it's gotten that much use out of it, maybe there's a way to make it a little bit more emissions friendly. But I mean, look at how fast, vehicles flip, or some vehicles don't last at all. So that's, there's a lot to think about with that. Good. I have a 2002 Jeep Grand Cherokee. There's a concern. There's a concern about that car even driving. Oh, I'm not into Jeeps. I've had a couple friends that just found them to break down a lot and be really expensive, but certainly emissions wise. Yep. SUVs, right? As we've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and then an economic collapse where people were, making Humvees and Hummers, because of course you have to drive one of those when you live in the suburbs and live in a gated community. I don't know. And then started backing off, of course, and the trend over the last 10, 15 years or so has been very, very different. Life cycle analysis of cars is important to look at, like Jack was saying. Absolutely. Yep. Life cycle analysis, especially when it's something that if you think about it versus we did like virtual water content of a pair of shoes. I mean, think about the resources that goes into a car, right? That goes into a vehicle, something that big that costs that much money. And then how do we continue to reuse or use or not, or flip that? What's the cycle of always having to have a new vehicle for financial purposes? how can that be bad for, for the environment, or have negative externalities on it in many ways. So yeah, good. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, we know that we love our vehicles. We know that most of the people in this class are driving as their primary form of transportation. We know that we also want to find solutions and make inroads on mass transit. And we will talk about more of that next time. I think an hour straight is about as much as I can talk straight through today. Yeah, so we're going to call it here. We will pick up on Thursday. I'll release more questions. There's papers due. There's discussions. There's just all sorts of things going on. So please, if you have any questions, remember that I'm here to help. That's my job, is to be an ally for you and an asset and a resource and all of those words. So be good people, do good things, mask up and be safe. We are not out of the COVID woods yet, or whatever analogy we want to use. If you have any questions about the class whatsoever, please, please, please reach out to me. Yeah, take care, everybody. Peace. See you next time.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
I just had a quick question
Bye.
about the food waste paper.
Yep.
You mentioned that, like, in the directions, it says there are 4 sources that we need.
Yep.
Bless you.
Excuse me. There's 3.
And there's only 3?
Yep. I put out 3.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect.
I was, one of the.
No. I figured.
Yeah. One of the ones that I used to use is really good, but now that I know that, it's worth you having said that, just to make sure that other people don't think that they might be missing a source. So I'll try and make some kind of announcements about it. Does that work, Riley? Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool.
I kind of figured. I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't missing anything. So
Yeah, no, you're not.
I appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Okay. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Peace.
Take care, everybody.